We are live. Welcome to the next installment of Mr. Messner's Math Speaker Series. With me is one of my very good friends. We met freshman year of college at RPI, that's Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, not Rochester. His name is Afshin Chaharmahalian. I call him by Piper, but we're going to call him Afshin. We were in a fraternity together for 4 years, and he's an engineer. Welcome, Afshin. How's it going? Say hi to everybody. Where are we video chatting from right now?
Thanks. Hey, everybody. Video chatting from Boston right now.
Boston, Massachusetts. How is the weather in Boston? It is 75 degrees and sunny right now in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, it's definitely not 70 and sunny here. It's more in the 40s.
Okay.
Lucky to have some sun today, although it looks like we might have a little bit more throughout the week, so not too bad. Yeah.
So tell me, where do you work and what do you do?
So I work at a company called Draper. We're located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're more of an engineering services organization. We kind of do a lot of work for the military, all branches, Army, Navy, Air Force. We also have some commercial sponsors that we work for. And we just have a kind of a set of core capabilities, and we try engineering solutions for our various customers.
So like engineering consulting, almost.
Almost, yeah.
And are you into a particular side of things? Are you working with specific types of clients? And what kind of services that you guys are good at do you personally handle?
So I primarily work on autonomous systems, mainly robotics. So trying to figure out some robotic solutions for the Navy primarily. We also have some space programs now that space has kind of been commercialized. So working on things like the Dream Chaser program and other programs as well.
Cool. Now take me through your steps from college, like where we went to college, and then the other jobs that you had before this job, and like what spurred change during those times.
Yeah, so when we were going to school, I went in for aeronautical and mechanical engineering. So really loved airplanes, wanted to dive into the subject, understood how they fly, how they were designed, kind of how to contribute and get more involved in that area. So coming out of school, I went to work at a company called CAE down in Tampa, Florida, and they made flight simulators for pilots. So
Tampa, gorgeous city. Is Tom Brady going to like Tampa, Florida?
Yeah, I think Tom Brady's going to fit in nicely, honestly.
What's Tampa known for?
Oh man, what is Tampa known for? It's a great question. Sun, warm weather. The Bucks, obviously. Tampa Bay Lightning, too.
Okay, so some good pro teams down there. Okay, cool. Yes. All right, so CAE flight simulators. Cool. Yep. What's next?
So after that, I kind of wanted to get back up into the Northeast, be a little bit closer to family. So I ended up working at a company called Raytheon. You may know them. They're kind of one of the bigger defense contractors. Worked on missile defense and radar systems for them. And kind of wanted to change after about 10 years or so. So that's when I started getting into the robotics industry. Went to work for a company called Hydroid down on Cape Cod. They manufacture these autonomous underwater robots to the Navy and other various academic institutions. And still wanted to get a little closer to home because that was kind of a 60-mile drive each way. So ended up closer to Boston and now work at Draper doing similar things. So
you're working with robotics. The next question, we start to shift over to like math questions and like what math looks like for you. But I'm certain like we can expand this to like, what does math / computer science and programming look like for you? Because I'm certain that you must be doing a lot of computer programming if you're doing robotics. So what does math look like in your job right now?
I'll tell you a funny story.
Tell me.
So when we were in college, it was just kind of when the internet really started to get going, right?
Hold on a second. My child is walking by saying outside. Come on, we're good. Wave hi to all the people in internet land. You want to go outside, Wally?
Want to go outside?
Yeah, he's gonna go outside. He just woke up from a nap. Okay, there's Wally. Okay, so back to college. Sorry.
Yeah, so when we were in college, the internet had just kind of started booming at that point. I think we were past the AOL days, but AOL Instant Messenger and things like that nobody even remembers was
Still
like,
existed. Yeah.
and coding classes and learning software languages, unless you were a computer science major, you weren't really involved in that type of stuff and that type of curriculum. So I remember thinking to myself, I'm doing aeronautical and mechanical engineering. The last thing I'm ever going to need to do is have to code, right? And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take these few classes here and become a little bit familiar with it, and then I'll probably never see it again. And then when I got the job down in Tampa, the first thing they wanted me to do was code everything. So it was a pretty awakening moment, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to get spun up, learn a whole bunch of different languages, get a little bit more familiar with computer science. And that didn't happen overnight. It took a couple of years. And eventually I was able to be successful at it. But yeah, we use, I'd say, primarily, depending on what the application is, either scripting languages like Python, applications like MATLAB, if you're doing a lot of testing type of work, testing robotics and things like that. If you're actually deploying applications to the robots themselves, then you're probably going to be in like more of a C++ type of language. So
you have to know all three of those.
Yeah, and more. There's other ones too. So
right.
now, always. Yeah.
While you're programming, I'm sure you have to keep math involved when you are solving problems and making things work. So, like, what does math look like at your job or over the course of your various jobs?
Yeah, it definitely has its different ways of coming about, depending on how complex things are. So, if you're trying to like figure out, how to get from point A to point B and take into account all these obstacles, things like geometry, linear algebra tend to kind of poke their heads out. I remember back in the
we're sweaty from napping. Yeah, mommy's outside. Can you go out the front door and find mommy? Okay, she's outside. All right. There's Lola. There's the child number 2. So you're using matrices and you're using kind of more advanced geometry out there, huh?
Yeah, I'd say that's some of the primary stuff. Statistics also comes into play when you're kind of simulating things and you have large amounts of data to work through and kind of foresee trends and things like that. So statistics definitely comes into play. And even when you're working on more physics-based systems like radar systems that tend to track things in space and throughout the atmosphere, that's where really calculus and I'd say probably even differential equations tend to come about in determining those types of algorithms. So
you use calculus in your job?
It's been a while since I used it, but I have used it.
Yeah. And were you developing kind of the models that you would be kind of looking at the rates of change from and everything?
Yep. And not only even developing them, but even when you start out, you're kind of just understanding what people have done before you. And so, seeing what they've done from an equation standpoint and why they're doing it, that's where some of the more advanced math topics tend to come into play.
So, talk about your experience with math then on an educational side of things. You were an engineer. So we've talked about this with my students. It's like, if you're an engineer, you have to go through the calc 1, 2, 3, and 4, but usually that's it. So that's, derivatives, integrals, then we get into series and infinite sums. Then we talk about differential equations and linear algebra. Was that your extent of math education? Did you feel like that math education prepared you for all the applications of math that you've been using in your jobs? Or have you been learning kind of the math that you've needed on the job? Can you kind of talk about the experience of college math and then transitioning that math into professional math?
Yeah, so I'd say probably in high school I took Calc 1 and Calc 2. We had AP calculus, but it didn't really gear us towards getting any kind of AP credit for college. It just kind of got us familiar with the subject matter.
Okay.
And then in college took Calc 1 and Calc 2 again, and then took differential equations, and I think even in calculus they put in some linear algebra type stuff in that course, but it wasn't a separate course. And so, I think for me, I got just enough out of those classes, but I had to really learn on the job how to apply it. I think if I had to have any advice looking back on myself or whoever is about to start is, try and understand the fundamentals of all of this stuff, of Calc 1, derivatives and integrals and things like that. Understand why they're important and how they get applied. And I think if you can do that, you'll have a much easier time than I did kind of going forward and trying to understand it once you get into the workforce.
So you're saying you had a tough time because maybe your calculus classes got into too many complicated parts of applications of it instead of just focusing on just the basics? Is that?
I think it was more, I just tried to power through it, and I didn't ask enough questions like, why is this important? And so I didn't understand it at a deep enough level. And so when all of these equations and math concepts were getting thrown around when I was at work, I was like, oh, so that's why it's important to take the integral here or the derivative here. Right. This is why eigenvalues are important and things like that, so.
You'll get there, kids, if you're an engineer. For those of you going to business school, you won't get there. I got there when I went to graduate school, in math.
But focus on the fundamentals and why these things exist and where they can be useful, and then I think you'll even get a little bit more motivated to learn it and understand it.
So you talked about powering through the math classes in college. Were you focused on grades? Did you think grades in college were super important for your jobs and for everything?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty important. I mean, you need to be evaluated against your peers to some extent, and that's what people use. So it's not everything and it's not nothing.
Right.
But you want to make sure that you get good grades for sure.
Well, what was your experience with math in high school? Did you just like power through? Did it come easy to you? Do you remember the classes you took kind of senior?
Yeah, so math in high school so I'll say this, and I think you can relate to this on some level. So math in high school for me came a little bit easier. I think mainly because the class sizes were a bit smaller and I was a little bit more familiar with the teachers. I also had really good teachers when I was in high school, and so I absorbed the subject matter a little bit better. And I find even myself today, drawing on more of my high school math than my college math.
Yeah.
So I took all the standard classes and Calc 1 and Calc 2 in high school, and that was pretty much it.
Did you take the AP exam?
I did not take the AP exam.
Why not?
Well, like I kind of said, so when I was in high school, we had a really good math teacher, and he left my senior year. And so we kind of had a fill-in math teacher my senior year. And I don't think he did a great job of really setting us up for the AP exam.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Messner might be doing for you folks. So
not might. He does. Yeah. Yes.
So take advantage of that and take the AP exam. And that way you can kind of free up your schedule a little bit more so for other things your first few years in college than having to retake the same stuff that you've already learned.
A lot of colleges, I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of colleges whose college advising are telling kids, you need to retake Calculus 1, you need to retake Calculus 2. If you're going to be this type of engineer, or if you're going to be like in business school, they're like, you have to take it. They almost say that they don't accept the AP credits to some people, even though they do. They just like make you work to use those credits.
Mm-hmm.
do you have to take those classes? Like, do you wish you went back and, I mean, I was a business major at RPI and I used my BC calculus exam score and I got rid of Calc 1 and 2 and I didn't have to take calculus or any math in college. And it was fine for me. It was great for me, actually. I had 3 classes my senior year for both semesters.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, personally, if I learned it in high school, I wouldn't retake it again in college. I don't think there's if you understand it, I don't think there's a need to. And even if you've been exposed to it at the high school level, at kind of the level that you're teaching at, then, you'll pick it up again when you need to, when you go into the workforce or into academia or wherever else you go.
If you actually need to use it. You're going to be one of the few people I'm going to talk to that actually uses it and uses math, which is great. So I'm glad I'm talking to you. If you went back to high school Afshin, okay, this is pre-Piper, high school Afshin, and you could talk to him. You go in the Back to the Future time machine that we know and love, and you could tell yourself one thing just about maybe math. What advice would you give your high school self?
I think we kind of touched on it, but it's understand why the stuff is important. Don't just try and power through a process that gets you to the answer to the equations that you're looking at. Don't just try and find, the quick and easy ways to just get the answer. Understand why you're getting the answer. Understand why this math concept, is being taught to you. And I think if you can do that, you not only will be successful in math, but you'll be successful in many, many other areas of your life. So.
Excellent answer. Now, what if you could give yourself any piece of advice? If you go back to your second semester, senior year, let's say like we're right around the decision time for college mode. Like kids are getting their acceptance letters right now. Remember when you were getting all those letters?
Yeah.
You could give yourself one piece of advice about that time in your life. What would it be?
So I'd probably say, up until that point in your life, things tend to be very structured. You wake up at a certain time, you go to school, your school has certain time slots for the different classes you're going to take. Things are kind of all well thought out for you. When you get to college, you're going to have to do that for yourself. You're going to have to set up your own structure. And I think the sooner you're able to do that, whether it's waking up at the same time or making sure you do homework at the same time every day, if you can do that for yourself, I think you're going to find it to be a little bit easier than it is for other people. You'll be able to manage your time a little bit better, manage to get things done, and also still have fun, which is the other half of college, which is probably the more important side of things. So.
Yeah, great answer. Yes, kids. The fun part of college is more important than the educational side of college. I'm glad. Me as a parent,
You brought me on here. I'm just telling the truth.
So that's looking forward to like their freshman year. But I kind of like wish I chose a different school because I always wanted to be an educator, and RPI I ended up going to as a business major, though I would have like minored in something education wise if I went to a school that had an education minor, so like you chose RPI. Was that good? Do you have any do you wish you thought more about other opportunities? A lot of kids just kind of right now pick the best school that they got into,
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any regrets about it. I would say it's always a tough decision, there's all this pressure about what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Did you pick the right school? What are you going to do after you graduate? All this and that. So, to try and come up with the right answer at 18 is really hard. I don't think I'd be surprised if half the people end up doing it correctly.
So do your best. Don't be afraid to transfer. Don't be afraid to change your mind and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I like to say everything is what you make of it. So, this is an opportunity. You made the best decision possible given the information you have. go into it and make the most of it. And you know what? If it doesn't end up working out, you can always change.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
But don't waste the opportunity. Really kind of dive into it and enjoy it as much as possible. The other thing I'd say, kind of getting back to your other question, is, you know, in between end of senior year and going into freshman year of college, you know, I know it's tough times right now, but really try and value the relationships and the friendships that you have. You know, kind of kind of figure out what it's going to be like keeping in touch with some friends from home, and keeping some relationships going with once you leave and go off to college, because, you know, at the end of 4 years and beyond, that's really going to be the most important thing, and you just kind of start laying the seeds for that now. So don't forget about the people that have been close to you all throughout high school. Keep them in mind going forward.
A lot of people I'll be interviewing are my friends from high school. So yeah, it's important to keep those connections moving. That's all I have for you. Thank you very much. But do you have anything for me? Do you have any questions about like the educational world or what I do or anything like that?
I guess, how do you actually prepare your students for this exam? How does it compare to normal coursework, and you know, what's your strategy for that?
So do two different answers. Either you got this exam, which is different than the normal exam. So which side of things? Do you want like a normal year, or do you
Yeah,
want this year?
both. Give me both.
All right. So for a normal year, you know, like I coach lacrosse. I'm sure you know the sports analogy, but like you kind of have to like do your scouting, and you have to be prepared when you go into anything. You know, you picking up a new project in robotics. You kind of want to see who else has tried this and try to figure out what they've done before. So like I do a lot of analysis of all the last like 15 years of AP free response questions and multiple choice questions, and how things have like trended and how things are changed, and a lot of the consistency, like this team is running this play every single time at this point in the exam or at this point in the game. You know what I mean? So I make sure that we are familiar with the very specific, familiar, repeated plays. So repeated questions.
Okay.
I make sure that we have a lot of time to review. I think it's important to go over an overview of everything and to kind of finish the content early, so we have a month of reviewing. That's normal. Like, and I split it up into two parts. We prepare for the multiple choice section, which is very different than the free response section, which is, you know, again, the scouted plays. I scout a lot of the plays from the free response section. I know the types of questions that they're going to ask, so I try to get them ready for those questions. Now, for this year, students are taking the test online. It's only going to be 45 minutes, and it's only going to be 3 questions, and they reduce the amount of material that's going to be assessed. So I had to kind of, with the other calculus teacher in my school, kind of think about what could they ask, because when they reduced the amount of content, and I had taught all my students all the content, but when they reduced the amount of content, the scouted plays started to get reduced, and we're kind of racking our brains trying to figure out. We think we have 2 of the 3 questions down, but we're kind of racking our brains for like what would be the third type of question. So we're just gonna kind of hope that the questions we're preparing these kids for will give them a good overview of everything, and will be the types of questions that they're gonna see. So that's what I'm doing.
I gotta say, I wish I had a teacher like you doing all that scouting for me instead of me trying to, you know, get ready by learning everything.
Yeah, no, like I get insulted when a kid says, so should I go like to Barnes and Noble and buy an AP prep book? Like I get very insulted when kids say that. I get insulted when kids ask about using a tutor. It's like, what? I'm like, I don't do a good enough job explaining these topics to you. That's my point of view on things. Yeah. But tutors are valuable if you, as a student, have no ability of sitting down and doing work. Like you're distracted. That's a big thing. Like you talked about with college, is like the distractions are really easy to take you away from your schoolwork. You have to figure out a way to get away from that. I used to go to the library.
Yeah, library is good for that. Yeah.
What else? You got anything else?
I think that's it.
All right, man. Well, Afshin, Chaharmahalian, Piper, thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed it. This will be posted on YouTube. Thanks for all the viewers from my class and from wherever you come from. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Afshin.
All right. See you guys.